All right. All right, welcome everyone. We're super excited to have you here for our finale of the Biomass Summer Artist Talk series with Maria Rendón and Sommer Roman, moderated by one of our curators, Holli Harmon. Our other two talks are on our YouTube channel if you missed them, and this will also be added there to the library after today. We're very happy to close out the show with Maria and Sommer. They've been, I would say, two of the most talked about artists that we've gotten questions about their work in the show. And so I think you'll get to learn a lot more about their process and what inspires them today. I did want to share before I hand it off to Holli, just a couple of news pieces. And if you're not as familiar with the Wildling, I've shared our mission statement here. We focus on the intersection of art and nature in all of our exhibitions. And we had a really fun summer coming out of COVID with the biomass exhibition that Holli Harmon and Nicole Strasberg so wonderfully co-curated and helped us put together. It features 11 contemporary artists working in a fascinating range of mediums. And some other news pieces that we're proud to share from this summer was that we joined Museums for All, along with 17 other Santa Barbara County museums, and we're able to offer free admission through that program for up to 4 adults who have EBT SNAP benefits, just with showing their card at check-in. So we're very excited to expand our accessibility through that program. And we also recently were awarded the Green Business Innovator Award for our environmental and sustainability efforts. Most significantly in the last year, we went on solar power, which was through the Community Environmental Council Solarize nonprofit program. And we've also been welcoming visitors back in the galleries. We had United Way's Fun in the Sun camp visit. So it's been fun to see our community getting back in here. And you may have been here for our open house last Sunday, which was a fun chance to kind of get back in the galleries and meet the artists. So thank you for everyone who's visited. And one other note before I let our speakers take it away, we just wanted to put it on your radar. We have our upcoming virtual fall fundraiser on Sunday, November 7th. And we're going to be bringing back our silent and live auctions with great items. And we're currently looking for donations for those. So if you have a great thought of something you might be interested in sharing with us, we're all ears. So you can email me or Stacy, and we'll be happy to talk with you about that. We'll also be premiering a new short documentary film. So it should be an exciting event. We had a great time last year and we're looking forward to it. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Holli Harmon to get us started.
Hello. I'm just happy everybody is here and excited to be talking a little bit about biomass and how that, sorry, of course that had to go off right there. It's my fax machine magic. Anyway, we're going to ignore that. How biomass came to be, which is really an exciting story. And it starts with having really good artist friends. And I think that that's part of the joy of being an artist and finding this network of kindred spirits. So Nicole is a dear friend of mine, and one of our fun artist dates to do is to actually go and visit artists' studios and meet other artists and look at their work. And how I first was introduced to Maria and Sommer was actually through the MFA program at UCSB. And I had gone to their exhibits. And I was absolutely impressed and moved with the quality of work that they were making and how memorable they were. And of course, I've followed them ever since that moment. And I've had the good opportunities to be in Maria's studio a couple times. And I even remember asking to meet with Sommer just to have coffee because I wanted to learn more about what she was doing. And all of the artists that are included in this biomass show are, the majority of them are artists that I've actually been able to be in their studio or have hung work with them and have admired them and wanted to see all of these things brought together. And so, as you know, the theme of the show is biomass. So we're looking at artists who work in multiples or in mass in scale. And all of their inspirations are from nature. So with that brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Maria and let her get started telling us more about her work.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here talking to you about my work. I first wanted to thank Stacy, Nicole, and Holly, and Lauren, obviously, too, about inviting me to be a part of the show. It has been an honor. It's a beautiful space, and it's so nice to be in such amazing company with Sommer, obviously, and all kinds of friends of mine, too. So if we could move on to the next slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about my background. I was born and raised in Mexico City. I was raised in a lovely family, and I first finished a graphic design degree in Mexico City, and then I came to the United States to study illustration. And this is one of the pieces that I did when I was a student at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. This is a portrait of my great aunt who was part of that loving and beautiful family nest. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background of where I come from. The next slide shows an image of some of the work that I was doing as an illustrator, which was for an amount of 20 years. My illustration was nothing like the painting that I'm doing now. They were obviously very narrative, and they were constructions made out of either wood or clay or found objects that they would be photographed and then published in magazines, mostly, for the most part. 80% of my work was published in magazines, but I did that for about 20 years, which is a long time. Then the next slide shows an image of one of my first paintings that I did, kind of like when I went back to painting, still having a bit of a narrative to it, sort of a surreal narrative. This painting is 48 by 60 inches. And it has still some hints of surrealism. There's these women that are floating around this big crow, but this is basically what I was doing right before grad school. I decided to go back to school because I felt like I needed some community and have a group of people that I could talk and have discussions about fine art as opposed to illustration. So that's basically why I went back to school. And the next slide shows one of the pieces that I did when I was in grad school, which is actually when I met Sommer. We started grad school in 2012 and finished in 2014. And this is one of the pieces. Actually, I think I showed this piece. We had a show together titled Remnants. And I think this was in that exhibition. So this is a painting of a tumbleweed that is connected to a form that I took it out of a form of a deer. So it's a portion of a deer. So it has some hints of landscape and also human, or actually animal forms, which I feel like it's a line that runs through the majority of my painting. The next slide shows an image of one of my paintings that were works on paper that were installed in my MFA show. It's titled Birdifant, and it's acrylic on paper, 72 by 52 inches. And every time I see this image, I remember that just around the corner, it was Sommer's work was there. So it's kind of neat to realize that. And other friends that are dear to me that were part of my cohort. So the next slide shows actually one of the projects that is in the exhibition at Biomass. I titled it Unfixed, and it is an accumulation of small paintings painted on Post-it notes. In this case, it was 100 Post-it notes, and then it kept growing and growing. It is inspired by landscape. All these paintings have some sort of a horizon line painted on them, and they suggest landscape. But so this was the second iteration that was exhibited at Atkinson Gallery, when I had a solo exhibition at City College. And then the next slide shows a detail of it, which you could see. If you haven't seen the show, it closes this weekend. So if you are able to go see it, I encourage you to go. And then the following image is the way that it's installed there, and it's again, it's 300 Post-it notes. And then the following image is me installing it, which what I love about this piece is that it can be transported in a little teeny cube. I can carry it with one hand, but it takes about 8 hours to install. And the more it grows, it just keeps obviously taking longer and longer time to install.
I'm going to ask you a quick question here, Maria.
Sure.
You've installed this before, but in a different format, correct?
Yes, it's been, square, the column, and actually just two main formats, like either a rectangle, a square, and then on that column.
Okay.
And sometimes this time I wanted the color to be more random, but I've installed it in a way that it goes from warm light to cool light. So a lot of the color is, you can organize it in a way that in many different ways. So it's kind of an interesting, or very playful piece to install. And I see some of these projects, both projects that are installed in Biomass, as projects that can be ongoing projects and that they can grow, and which is very apropos to the title of Biomass. I mean, it's like they could be they could invade the world, I guess. So the following slide, I just, in an effort to show a little bit more of what basically the breadth of my work. I was asked by CAF, which now is the Museum of Contemporary Art Santa Barbara, to do a project related to Day of the Dead. And this is, I decided to turn this room into a grave. So we painted the floor, from the floor to 6 feet brown, and then blue sky. And we made all these flowers made out of tissue paper. And this was the next slide shows a little bit of sort of like that's how you encountered the room. So you had to duck under in order to get into the room. And I collaborated with a chef that made food that was all roots related. So there were a lot of beets and earthy food that came together, or that sort of informed the fact that we were in a way eating underground, I guess. And then the next slide shows a piece titled Accidental Virtue, which is made out of paper, cut paper. And all these forms are, again, anthropomorphic forms that are loosely based on animals. I was thinking about notions of hybridity. So these forms are intersecting each other, and they are coming together to form a bigger entity or bigger being. So that's why I was thinking of what I was thinking when I was making this piece. The next slide shows the detail. And again, this is another project that could grow, or that could sort of invade, like I said, invade the world. The following piece, or the following slide, is another installation that I call it. Also, the Museum of Contemporary Art used to have a satellite space. And in that satellite space, the curator asked me to look at and it was at Hotel Indigo. And they asked me to react to a particular part of the hotel. And that's what I came up with. The piece was related to notions of drought and the lack of water and the abundance of water. So all these are strips of paper. You can move on to the next slide and show these are strips of blue or painted blue paper that I put. And as you saw, it still has some ideas, or the general look of it is thinking about landscape forms or bodies in a landscape. The next slide shows a painting, and throughout all these projects of installation projects, I was painting. So this is a piece that's titled Primordial Walls. It's a small painting, it's 12 by 9. And it's a work on paper that it's mounted on panel. And I've been working with very diluted material, having this diluted material just with water. I don't use any other medium, but my intention for having very diluted material so that my medium I give my medium agency to make marks that I wouldn't ordinarily make myself. And so I see it as a collaborator of my intentional marks and the marks of the paint and water. So that's what that is. And like I said, I wish I could show more paintings, but I know we only have a little time. So the next slide shows some of the examples of one of the pieces that are in the exhibition. It's titled 2 by 2. The project is titled 2 by 2. And I will read a little statement. So this series is titled 2 by 2. It's an interpretation of the story of Noah's Ark that narrates the preservation of living beings during apocalyptic times. The forms in the work are loosely based on animals painted on 2 sheets of translucent vellum. I see this as a substitute of a layer of flesh that can be seen through. It is my way of sampling species in a petri dish so that we can preserve them in perpetuity. So what I do for this project is I open the Encyclopedia of Animals, and I do a loose drawing of a free drawing of one part of the animal. And then I let the material dry, and then I react to it, coming with another layer of vellum and putting something on top of it. So the first one is a platypus, and the second one is a lizard. And the way that I've titled them, the next slide shows my little equation of how I title these. So in the second paragraph, it's the titles goes by the class, the number of the class, which the first one is mammal, so it's number 1. Then the first 4 letters of the order, then the page number, and then the first five letters of the name. And if it's two names, and it's 3 and 2 letters. So you can see, if you can go to the next slide, it has a very kind of, the title, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to me. It's like, it's my way to, since these are very organic paintings, they have very forms that are a little, organic. It's my way to make them a little bit more high tech. And it's also the first time I introduced light into as a medium, which I see as a source of energy from within each being. I feel like light can ignite the propagation of existence. So that's basically my whole thinking behind this project. And I hope you can see it. These are, I scanned these, or I photographed these, but they, in the exhibit, there's 12 of them that are placed inside a light box that was made by Arturo Herrera Soto, who's an amazing preparator. He works at MCA, and he's a really amazing craftsman. So anytime if you need him, he's amazing. So the next slide shows, again, I'm back to painting. I was invited by Jeremy Tesmer, who's a curator at Sullivan Goss. He asked me to participate in a solo exhibition at the beginning of this year, so it was March and April. And for this, all these paintings, they were 18 paintings in the show, 16 to 18 paintings in the show. And it is, these are all inspired by the elements of the natural world. It's titled, the show was titled Rain. And rain, I actually, when I mix my paint, I use 3 types of water. I use tap water, rainwater, and holy water. I put drops of 1 drop of holy water in all my paints. It's a little bit of a maybe background, but it's just something that I do. So, and I just wanted to share with you some of the way that this exhibition looked. I had paintings that were 9 by 12, and some were mid-size, and the first Lily was 48 by 16 inches, so 4 by 5 feet. And the next, so you can just flip through a little bit of what the show was. This is this was in the show Jesucita, which is named after one of the fires nearby. And so, like I said, most of the pieces in the show were inspired by either some sort of a fire or a flower or elements, I guess, of the natural world. I'm interested in showing kind of like a memorial of the things that I see and that I experience. And it could be, like I said, a landscape or a plant of some sort. And then lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about another, so when half of my floor is covered with plastic, because a lot of the material, since I work with very diluted material, goes onto the floor. So I've been using some of this paint, which I have transferred onto pieces of paper as paintings. So this is basically the way that my palette is set up in half of my studio. And then the next slide shows an image of the piece. I consider this piece was actually one of the paintings that were lifted up from the background intact. I didn't do anything to it. But I had a stack of about 40 or more images or paintings that had not been manipulated, but I saw the potential of using some of these marks that were made on the sidelines of my paintings that were made by the material, and I could see them as potential images or paintings. So then there were a bunch that were horrible. Only like 5 of them were good. And so I now started manipulating them. So this is an image that you can see the layers of paint that are sort of covered by other layers of paint that are more intentional marks. And this one in particular, I made listening to a story of one of my favorite Mexican authors, Juan Rulfo. So, and that's it. I mean, it's just another way of trying to make paintings with the materials that I have at hand, and the accidents and the allowing chance into my work. So that's it. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'm going to just say that I encourage everybody, when you do have questions, to enter them into our Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we will have a good Q&A question period at the end, because I forgot to mention that before we started. But we are getting some good questions coming, and we will answer them.
Great. Thank you so much.
And here is where you can find out more about Maria's work and her wonderful Instagram page. And I guess Sommer will start next. Is that right, Lauren?
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Just as Maria said, thank you to the Wildling Museum, to Lauren and Stacy and the curators, Holly and Nicole. It's such an honor to be in the show. It's fantastic. Fantastic artists and work. So thank you. I am going to jump in with my formal artist statement, and I'm going to read that to keep it a little more eloquent and efficient. So bear with me. And the statement is just to start off with the what and why of my work, and then I'll continue to show more images of the breadth and width of the work, and then break down some of my process. And then I'll specifically talk about some of the works in the show. That's the blueprint of the talk. So, so curiosities about life drive my artistic inquiries. How do we navigate and know ourselves in relationship to the human and natural world around us? How do we know what we know? And I'm interested in how we can think and know through intuition, feeling, and sensing and making. And so my work tries to recall what I call an alterlogical and multisensory intellect that stretches beyond the safety of cerebral and verbal certitude, and instead returns us to realms of the feeling body, the wild, and the domestic sphere. So I work then with materials associated with these realms, like domestic discards, textiles, feathers, hair, furniture, nature-based forms, microscopic imagery. And I sort of study these languages and alongside create new ones. So together with my materials, I like to say that we think and make and transform. And it is a space of endless combinations. Just as a child plays and makes and molds, I make believe as a way to feel out the world and understand and make sense of it. My practice demands isolated time and space, just like meditation. And the process takes me elsewhere, a portal into where material and mind, body and nature and senses, impulse commingle in a very playful process. And the results are playful hybrids or curious hybrids that exist outside of dualistic paradigms, and instead in a more sensuous and sensory realm, and inviting you all and their encounters to do the same. My hope is that the softness and familiarity of the work invites, while the oddity causes pause. The visual and sensory push-pull of the work aims to evoke a sense of wonder about ourselves and our kinship to the other worlds and the beings around us. So that is the what of the work, and hopefully some images circulated through work. A little bit about me. I work and live in San Luis Obispo. I have 2 little ones. I finished my MFA, like Maria said, from UC Santa Barbara in 2014. And right before that, I was working, I sort of had a crooked path into the arts. My original degree was in sociology, but many years later, hopping around the country, was in France. I found myself in a lot of community colleges and classes. And I started working in 3 dimensions and based on some assignments with fabric. And that really became a playground for my hands. And thinking back on my history as a younger woman, young child, it's not so surprising that I loved working with materials. I mean, my mother introduced me to sewing, very basic, but some basic sewing when I was young. I loved making pillows and would try to make clothes with her doing most of the work, at least the technical stuff. And one of my grandmothers taught me how to crochet. So I always had an interest and a little bit of some experience with it. But I think when I entered in sort of the fine art world, I had just enough to keep me interested of sort of something formal, but I wasn't really boxed in. So then the art world kind of became this playground to be a very playful, inquisitive researcher of what was possible. And that's really like some of this work came out of that. But when that's how I sort of entered into graduate school. And then graduate school, was an amazing, informative time where my work unraveled and I got flooded with new ideas and broke down the what and why of my work and added materials. I started bringing in the body and photography and furniture items, really exploring, making weird things, asking a lot of questions, meeting people, having a lot of critiques and conversation, which I think just grows and evolves our work and helps us figure out what it's all about and pushes it into sort of, I think the conceptual aspect of my work grew immensely in grad school. We're drenched with theory. Thank you, Colin Gardner. Okay, all to say, yes, my work changed a lot. As you can see, hopefully some of these images got some quirky stuff happen. I brought myself in. You can see the body a little bit more. So then the next image, I want you to go to thank you. I'll go now through a few projects that in the last 5-ish years that were important, bringing us then into the now. So right after grad school, I was invited to be the artist in residence at UC Santa Barbara. It was an awesome year of really time and space. And that image, I put me in it so you can kind of see the big space in relation to like a body. And you can see a little bit, hopefully, the work, got bigger and just a little more looser. You can see some Jessica Stockholder influences at the time. I started working with paper clay. And during this time, I was basically preparing for the culminating solo exhibition to sort of finish the residency. And then I was also invited by the Museum of Contemporary Art, mentioned by Maria in Santa Barbara. One second. And that I was also working on a group show with that. Okay, sorry, next slide. This is an image of the culminating solo exhibition for the residency. So just in the Red Barn Gallery, I titled it Passage. So a little peek of, you can see then the work has sort of changed. I started bringing in light and you can start seeing some of the armature on some of the works. And I was dipping the fabric in sort of a resin-like material to harden it. Again, still with that inquisitive mind of what's possible with these materials. Okay, next, let's see what's on the next. So there's a detail shot of the work. And I think this show, I'm always a through line through whatever my work has changed is an interest in color and playing with color. And really the fabric and materials are sort of my painter's palette for sure. The next slide shows that, so the other project at the time I was working on was, I was preparing work for a group exhibition at the MCA called Out of the Great Wide Open. It was an honor to be part of the show. And I think a glimpse, my work at the time was getting very playful and open. I was thinking about play and movement and travel, you know, yeah, so just a lot more exposure, less refined in a sense, in relationship to how my work started some years back. Okay, the next image is my most recent solo exhibition at the New Media Gallery at Ventura College. That was 2018. I titled In the Woods, Perpetual Youth. It's actually, I have this little quote. It's based off of a little excerpt from Ralph Waldo Emerson that I still love and I still think about. So I'm going to read it. I think it kind of relates to some of the work in the biomass show. It says, the greatest delight which the fields and woods minister is the suggestion of an occult relation between man and the vegetable. I am not alone and unacknowledged. They nod to me and I to them. In the woods too, a man casts off his years, as the snake his slough, and what period soever of life is always a child. In the woods is perpetual youth. I just love that, you know, again, speaking to that relationship, mystical relationship between human and plant or the natural world. This show was the first time I paired my fabric for soft sculptures with some drawings. So you recognize some work in there that is in the biomass show, some of the cell portraits, drawings, and some of the soft sculptures. So yeah, and I'll just sit when I'll talk more about that later, those works. So breaking down my process a little bit, because I do get questions about that. I do, when I work with for my soft sculptures, I am really sourcing predominantly reclaimed or discarded materials. So clothing, linens, housewares, pillows, faux fur, or, you know, things from nature, or old furniture items. For one, because I just don't want to contribute to like more waste, because we have a ridiculous amount of waste in our society. And I like the idea of transforming something old to new. That is embedded in my work, bringing it new life. And then the fact that these materials are, okay, the materials were once part of a body, a home, and it has the smells or the memories embedded to that life is sort of a part of the conceptual aspect of my work. That's not always, you know, it's invisible. I think that's important that the materials were used. This is just a quick image, a glimpse into my messy studio world. You might be able to pick out some of the tools I might be using. You know, I'm using the scissors and pliers, and I have a new electric rotary cutter that's amazing. I should have had it many years ago. I sometimes use a sewing machine, use a lot of glue again and wire. And, you know, I'm drawing, it's just a lot of things happening at once, and it's messy. But there's the real glimpse of what's happening. Okay, so breaking down my process a little bit more, the next image shows me how I sort of like break down the fabric into parts. You can see my little palettes of color. I start to think about and organize. A lot of these gestures are very simple. I'm stuffing, I'm binding with wire, I'm twisting and rolling, gluing and folding. Again, very simple, but every time, if the material slightly changes, even, you know, between a blanket and a t-shirt, it's going to change the outcome. Or if the fold is slightly different, I'm fascinated with the endless combinations, really, and the gestures and the line quality that sort of arise out of these manipulations. And so again, I am doing that, but I'm also kind of following the lead of like what's right, you know, what's happening. It's constantly, it's like a little bit of I'm a researcher. I'm kind of figuring out what's possible. And right when I think I've seen it all, there's just more to come. So the next image shows another up close of some of the parts I might be creating, I am creating and thinking about. So those little brown pieces, for example, these just, you know, that's just some crazy folds and glue and cutting. But I think early on when I started working with fabric, I started noticing, oh my gosh, this was just like a simple thing I did with my hands with a man-made, material. And it looks like very much from the natural world, or it's referencing something very microscopic or a tree or something. And that's so fascinating to me. There's sort of this process of alchemy, some magical transformation from something man-made into something other, whether it's a simple twist that, and I think in circles that amass into many, it really does they become beings or things from another world. And I think that that is still that was the beginning of where the work started, and that's still there. All right, the next image shows just some images from nature to see. It's not quite where it's a source, but it's not. It kind of shows where my head's at a little bit. So I don't go out nature and looking to replicate, but I'm looking, right? I'm seeing and finding relationships that are meaningful to me. I love the image of the tree limb that very much looks like it has, looks like a human limb, a knee, it looks like wrinkled skin. And that relationship that is no doubt just there is already something I'm thinking about in my studio. And so it just sort of reinforces the work that I'm doing, or those ideas just come back and find their way in the work. So it's less like I'm not going out and going, oh, I like that flower, I want to recreate it. I might find something I like and say, think about it. Might be a color or a texture or an idea behind it. It's also the seed thing that I'm holding. It's a seed. It also looks like a brain. I also recently been thinking about brains a lot. So I just love that it's sort of both. There's a shared DNA, a kinship. So that's my relationship with nature for now in the work. The next image shows where and how sketching is part of my process, because I do get asked this a fair amount. So this is different than sort of the process of the drawings that are in the show. This is very much a sketching, doodling process. I do not sort of think of a three-dimensional form, draw it, then create it. That is not how it works. It's very much, I might start working with materials, I discover some forms, I start building. Then I might draw, or I might find an old drawing and I might feed into the work. So in the end, it's all kind of happening alongside one another, and they all end up becoming like cousins. But I don't really have drawings of my sculptures, if that makes sense. I'm not doing some like replication. The next image shows back to the sculptures themselves. One of my inner armatures, and this is one of the pieces in the Wildling, in the biomass show. So kind of like how I use materials for the fabric, I try to do the same for the inner armature, just to keep, there's so much discarded stuff out there, and nice objects that have interesting forms that are rigid that help me build my work. On the left, you see it's like an old toilet paper stand. Shower shampoo holders are great because they're kind of light, but they're wiry. And I glue, I bind, I screw them together and haphazardly build my forms. So sometimes the sculptures have some really weird things inside them that no one will know. Like there's some stuffed animals in a few of them. But that's my little secret. Now our secret. Let's see what's next. Okay, the next image shows the two sculptures in the show. So the left is the green piece I titled, this is actually one of my original pieces early on. It is near and dear to my heart, so I love to know that it's still showing in these formal spaces. It's such an honor. This is, I titled Elizabethy, and it's after just a random extinct plant. So at the time, I just loved this idea, simple idea of kind of rebirthing like a plant-ish thing out of materials. It came out, it felt like out of nowhere, just kind of found itself alive again. And so I just looked up some scientific name of a plant that no longer exists. The other piece, the sort of gray and purple piece, I titled Sighting Number 179. The number is completely arbitrary, but the idea behind it was like a sighting that you sort of a thing you stumbled upon, maybe in the forest or whatever, on maybe a expedition, and a sighting. I call it a sighting, so it's like not to box in or encapsulate it into anything yet. Like it's not, doesn't have a title. We're not sure what it is, but it kind of just numbering it as if it's one of many things you might be seeing, you're going to think about and research later. So it kind of keeps the idea, hopefully, of a curious eye, but also a little bit scientific, and hopefully like it's an odd thing you are encountering that you want to know more about. That's the idea kind of about the titling. So the next image shows the pieces. If you haven't been to the show in person, that kind of you can see the work in the space. I thought they, just in general, the show was installed so beautifully. And behind the pieces, you can see my drawings, the self-portrait, the black and white pieces. So that's, I'll segue into that and with talking about my drawings. So these, it's a series I have titled Cell Portraits. Let me just read it quick to keep it more eloquent. So my cell portrait drawings are translations of microscopic cross sections and of selected plants paired with cross sections of human anatomy. They're a study and a meditation on these internal visual languages and how they're unique yet related. Each one is a poetic pairing of something plant and human, and it sort of is calling to attention these silent exchanges, the folklore, the interconnectedness between the two life forms. So I'm sort of resizing and translating, and they then become one image, one portrait in a sense. They are hybrids, just like my sculptures. They're kind of both and. The one, so cell portrait number 5 is titled Do You Make Wishes? This one is a pairing of a human like a cross section of a human trachea, like our windpipe, with the cross section of a dandelion. A lot of times it's the root, and I'm getting this imagery just online. As long as it's decent enough quality for me to gather most of the visual cues, because I'm not trying to make it exact. Anyways, those two are pairing, you know, again, about this idea, we're trying to find this plant, we're blowing on it to make a wish, and sort of, again, that relationship between, and silent, really very private. What are we wishing for it between a human and a plant? The next one is One Day You'll Find One, and that's a cross section of a human eyelid with the cross section of a clover plant. So again, that whole folklore, you find the 4-leaf clover, you're going to fall upon good fortune. And again, it's something very private, but we often believe in some way. And I love, I won't elaborate too much there. And then the last cell portrait one, called Blood and Sap, is a pairing of a pine tree root with a human artery. So pine tree, one of the pine tree is one of the oldest organisms, so symbol to humans as a symbol of survival and longevity in life. And then again, the human artery is one of the human lifeline. So again, just taking these ideas and pairing them. And I take the artistic liberty to figure out how they get paired. Like sometimes an image, some of the imagery gets duplicated or enlarged, and how they sort of merge is up to me, but that's sort of the fun of it. And I'm not trying to be over exact when I look at the imagery. I'm not like counting circles, because there are thousands of them. It's sort of like understanding the patterning and then using my hand. And so it is a translation. I like to keep it that way. So it's has a little bit of my mark as well. So last two images. This one is the largest cell portrait that I've done. It is in the show. I did it during a residency. It was like a month residency at the Squire Foundation in Santa Barbara. And this one is called I Feel You, You Feel Me. And it's a pairing of a blade of grass with human skin sensory receptors. So the outer largest ring is the human skin. And I sort of put it into the circular format. The middle ring is the grass, and like the smiley face in parts that look like a face are actually where the water comes through. Side note. And the inner ring is again a repetition. It's a replication of the first ring. So the skin, it's sort of like us, like the skin enveloped in the grass. But again, it's like when your bare feet touch grass or when you touch a plant, there is again that nonverbal silent exchange that happens. They do feel our touch, we feel them, and what is it, whatever. I just think that's a beautiful moment. And that's my translation of it. So the last one, there's a little GIF or GIF of that one being completed. It was very hard on the wrist because these are probably done better with a lot of time in between because it just incites tendonitis a little bit in the wrist. But I just use micron pens if anyone's curious, and it's thousands and thousands of mini circles. So that is the last image, and hopefully there's time for questions and dialogue. And thank you all for being here.
Super. Those were wonderful presentations. And this last slide, obviously you can find out more at Sommer's website and her Instagram page. We did have a number of questions that came through, so I'm going to throw them out there. But I had asked both Maria and Sommer to come up with a question that they would like to ask one another, because it's been 7 years since they've completed their MFA program at UCSB, and they've remained friends. I'm sure that they have some new thoughts about their own work and each other's. So Maria, do you want to, how about Sommer, you ask Maria her question?
All right.
And then we'll turn tables.
Okay, so I was thinking about this theme of accumulation mass. That's an obsessiveness that is present in the biomass show, which I love. And so I just wanted to hear your thoughts, Maria, on where obsession comes into your practice. Do you identify with that word as an artist and how it comes into play? Wait.
You're muted, Maria.
Yeah. No, I wanted to respect the noise in my studio. Anyway, yes, I definitely relate to the notion of obsession. I mean, look at the Post-it note piece. It's something that started as just 4, and then it grew and grew and grew. So when I see your work, especially your self portraits, there's this obsession compulsion element to them that all these little marks and make a huge being. So it's part of I mean, it is actually something that I'm attracted to when I look at work. You can sense how an artist is present in when they are obsessive about their work. You can sense their presence. So I don't know if there's something, it's something intuitive that I think that you get when somebody is so into their work, obsessive about their work, and you can sense the presence. So yeah, and I can see it in your work a lot, and I'm glad that you can tell that it's something that you relate to, and that you like. I mean, like you just said. How about you?
Well, Maria, you had a question, didn't you?
Yes, I do. When I look at your drawings and experience your sculptures, I think of multiplicity of mark making and notions of hard work and craftsmanship. Do you think that this way of working is a refreshing reaction to how bound we are to technology? Just kind of like this. I mean, when you were talking about how that silent moment of interaction between you touching something from nature, that seems so beautiful. It's a beautiful moment. And I think we are going farther and farther from it because we're so inundated with technology. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I wouldn't say it's a reaction against our movement, but it's definitely conscious, and I do value anything that's handmade, handcrafted, things that take time, because I think we are moving away from knowing how to spend a long time with something, with ourselves, or in boredom even. But even the time it takes to really handcraft something, we want it immediate. We want our Amazon delivery. And I'm guilty of all that. So I have my own addiction to technology, but I think, so maybe it is my antidote in my own life to keep that alive. And that value is, because I use technology in my work as well, but I do love that it's very material based, very, you have a lot more get to be present. I want a body to react to it. And it uses my hands to their death to create both the sculptures and the drawings.
Mhm.
So yeah, I hope that answered your question, but I think
those are really thoughtful questions, and I'm glad I had you come up with some good ones. We've had wonderful questions from the audience, and I'm just going to kind of pepper you with what came in and go back and forth. The first one was from Kevin Patterson, and it goes to Maria about affixing the unfixed piece, the Post-it note piece. How did you get it so straight, and what did you use to fix it to the wall?
The glue of the Post-it note is a glue. You can actually purchase a glue stick that's a repositionable glue. So you can reapply that Post-it note. There is. I gave one to Lauren just in case one fell on the floor, which I would welcome. But initially, I think the museum didn't want them to fall. So I said, okay, instead, just in case, we can reapply the glue onto them. And just I used a ruler and a level to install it. I started in the middle and on the top, middle and top, and worked my way out. So it was kind of tough, and I did it on my own. So it was, I wish I had my husband initially, he would assist me by gluing, applying the glue. And I think he got tired of it. He's like, I'm not doing this anymore. So it is grueling work, but thanks for the question.
Okay. From Marcella Simmons to Sommer, what kind of paper do you draw on?
Oh, I don't have one go-to, but the cell portrait drawings are on like nice arches, or I don't know, whatever good. I like to get is it hot press? It's super smooth. Like it needs to be smooth. I don't want a lot of texture, but because I have those tiny pens.
Right.
Anything that has a nice thickness to it that's substantial. Yeah. Really they're like water media papers, but I like them for my drawings.
Great.
Yeah.
Maria from Joan Davidson, your surrealist work reminds me of Carrington. Is she an inspiration for you?
Oh, Leonora Carrington?
Yes, I think that's who she's.
Yeah, I think either Leonora Carrington or Remedios Varo were paintings that I saw when I was little in Mexico. There's a lot of both their work in Mexico City. So I guess maybe indirectly, it's like that learning through osmosis, where you have these images in your mind, and or magical realism stories, not specifically. I guess that would be my answer, not specifically, but maybe through osmosis for sure.
Okay. And Sommer from Kevin Patterson, he wants to know, did you ever take a biological drawing course?
I did not. One day, maybe one day.
Maybe. And from Mary Ince to Maria, I noticed that you use flash in some of your paintings. What are the advantages and characteristics that you like about it?
Flash is a paint that is, it's a vinyl paint, water-based vinyl paint that doesn't get reactivated with once it dries, meaning it's pretty stable. But the reason why I like it is because it dries really flat like gouache, very velvety like gouache. So it's it also has really intense pigments and colors. So it has the beautiful attributes of gouache, which an intensity of colors and velvet drying, but the benefits of acrylic, which is it doesn't get reactivated. So it's a wonderful, if you have good ventilation, it's an amazing, and it's still water-based. So it's beautiful. You should see, I mean, if you see some of my paintings in person, you'll know what I'm talking about. You're like, you get seduced by some of those surfaces.
You're muted, Holly.
From RT Livingston, this goes to Sommer. Do you dye any of your fabrics?
I normally do not. I have done it. I did it actually for the one that's the gray one, because I really needed a specific gray, very, very subtle, to get that nice fade. And so I dyed them, but I really try to just use what I can find. And I think I like this hunt. I like the hunt. But I've taken a course, like a workshop on like natural dyeing, using vegetables and plants. And I love that process. It sort of feels like another endeavor. So I can imagine it coming into play again at some point, but currently not really. Good question.
Okay. Well, I think that this has been a really, really informative talk. If anybody else wants to throw something out there, I just wanted to kind of conclude with one question to both of you. I'd like you to think about a little bit is the Wildling Museum. What a special space we have in our community. It's a museum that is devoted to art and nature, which is certainly an important topic in our day and age. Why do you think these kind of institutions are important, specifically this little gem that we have as artists? So either of you can respond to that question.
I think spaces like the Wildling, first of all, an opportunity, when you're given the opportunity to react to a space or to look at a space and do an exhibit there, it's a wonderful opportunity for artists, and also collaboratively when you see the space. I mean, you and Nicole did a beautiful job curating the exhibition. So as I guess selfishly as an artist, it's really important to have an institution like that for opportunities for us to be able to showcase our work, but also for the community to have the ability to be exposed to people like us that are doing the type of work that we're doing, and hopefully we can move the community or inspire them in some way. So I think I feel like it's a win-win.
Thank you. How about you, Sommer?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, museums in general are just such a unique space for art and education, culture to intersect, to infuse a community. I think it being a maybe smaller one, maybe might feel more accessible, less intimidating, approachable for the community. And yeah, I just think generally speaking, as long as they're easy, like I like to see them as accessible spaces that are, an alternative, something to do with the family, to be exposed. I think that's what Maria was saying, like a museum brings in energy, whether it's local artists, but a lot of time artists from other places that you wouldn't know of. So it's infusing a community with new ideas and energy. And I think they're fantastic institutions.
Well, you certainly both have brought us lots of really wonderful energy, and I applaud and I'm inspired by your imaginations. I mean, they're just wonderful. So thank you for sharing it and being part of the biomass. So I'll turn it over to Lauren.
I did want to mention, we did have a question come through, one more for Sommer. Marilee asked if, well, she thanked you for the Emerson quote, and she asked if you may have read the book Overstory, where she read it in the foreword.
Oh, no. I got that quote from a book called Nature. I think it was highlighting Emerson and someone else. So I think it was excerpts from his work. But I'm sure that quote has maybe found itself in different places highlighting his work.
Yeah, it's a good one. And then we had a note for Maria from Marcella saying that your Sullivan and Goss show was amazing. And she said she wanted to know more about the process, but I think you covered that. But just lots of positive praise over here. I did want to share my screen just one more quick time to mention that we have following this show. Well, first of all, this is the final in our series, and it's available on YouTube. Like I said at the top, we're so excited to have worked with all of these very talented artists, and we hope that you get a chance to see it in person. The show ends this Sunday. We're open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So we hope you'll check it out. And then check out the recordings if you haven't seen our other programs. And then coming up soon, you can mark your calendars for the end of this month. We have Ansel Adams and Alan Ross in a show called Sharing the Light. Alan Ross is the former assistant for Ansel Adams, and he's sharing his own work alongside his collection of Ansel's work. So it'll be one very incredible show. And then close to home, 3 printmakers with new pieces by Claudia Borfiga, Karen Schroeder, and Sarah Woodburn. And that's going to be in October. So lots to look forward to. And we're just so thankful again to Sommer and Maria and all of the artists of Biomass and Holly and Nicole for all of your work. This exhibition has been a really fun one to reopen after our COVID closure with. So we just couldn't be more thrilled with how it's gone. So thank you all. And yeah, we hope to see everyone again at the museum soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for showing up too, our audience.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.